No. I might save that for later.
Whether you read the story, watch the story, do not talk about it with anyone until you're finished.
Are you smoking in a library?
Attack on Titan was so close to so many people. Everyone else's emotions are going to get in the way of how they talk about it to you. My only advice to you, let it be a personal experience until you've caught up and you're done.
Okay. Attack on Titan is unique in that it doesn't start with our characters as teenagers out on a quest like most shonen do. They're kids at first. Kids who, in their own ways, are tired of the life in the walls and want to do more of their existence. I found Eren, incredibly annoying. I mean, he's a kid, so it's fine, and he definitely chills out later in the series. But him having such a contrarian personality and that being contrasted with Armin's submissiveness and Mikasa's protectiveness was a smart move in my opinion, because on his own, he can be a little grating sometimes. Look, while I wish we got to know more about our characters' lives before the arrival of the Colossal, as I think that could have led to the breaching of the walls being more emotional and intense, I still like how the series captures its tone. You feel like these are fierce monsters, you feel like the danger that the Titans pose could destroy the status quo at any moment, and how easy that could be. Attack on Titan is a series that focuses a lot on perspective, how perspectives interact with each other and how they inform each other, or even how a lack of sufficient perspective can harm a narrative, but we'll definitely get to that. For example, not everyone is ecstatic to work for the Scouts because of their fear for Titans. Even amongst that fear, there's a variety of reasons for each character to be feeling it. On the flip side, there are a vast variety of reasons for characters to fight the Titans. Stuff like this makes me enthralled with how these people think. Jean is obviously the sleazy guy who turns competent, but I like how him and Eren butt heads so much. Eren had to face that sort of complacency in the adults he was surrounded by as a kid, and Jean just thinks he's a pretentious prick, which, I mean, he is. Eren was obviously going to be alive, but I think his death was really strong nonetheless. Like in certain other series, the main character dies before you even get to really know them, and as a result, instead of feeling melancholic catharsis, you just feel a whole lot of whatever. But thankfully we know who Eren is, and that death affects the characters in ways that make sense given what we know about them too. Especially Armin, who even becomes stronger because of Eren's death, and Mikasa, who takes on a suicidal leader role. Attack on Titan also does something that makes me really happy. It has a traitor plot that doesn't make me want to kill myself. Emotionally gripping, dissonant conflict swirled on by a variety of emotions. You may not know what Reiner is fighting for, but because you've been with him since he took Eren up on that cliff, this betrayal affects you in a very empathetic way. In fact, it leaves me wanting more, like seeing more scenes like Annie fighting Mikasa and the Scouts betting on who would win. Bonding moments like these build up to these moments that already deliver pretty well. And hey, regardless of moments with characters I wish were there, I am still satisfied with all of this wonderful character work, surrounded by tension, action, fear. Despite where this series is going, I think stuff like this still cements it as a classic, at least in my opinion. Season 3 was a personal mixed bag for me. The show has OVAs that I forgot to watch.
What are you? An idiot sandwich.
Anime has a habit of keeping pretty relevant plot details amongst independent forms of alternative experiences that people might have missed because they didn't search Crunchyroll long enough. But still, I don't mean to use that as an excuse. I should have done my research. This lack of proper context might have been the reason why I didn't connect with the idea behind Levi's squad. They're on the run, yet we don't really get a proper sense of that before the plot gets its proper footing. Flashbacks are all over the place, characters talk about events that we haven't seen, and we don't really get a sense of how it feels for these characters to live in isolation and in constant paranoia. Stuff like seeing Historia open up to her teammates as soon as possible would have been better than keeping that scene until much later. This is sort of like when MHA had that float training session flashback right before it was relevant, instead of way earlier to build up why it was so relevant. But it's more than that. This is the first time these characters kill other human beings. And given where the plot is going, I don't know if this section of the story gives them enough time to reflect on that. Also, the story acts like Kenny was a person who lived in this universe for a while, someone who everyone is either intimate with or sort of reveres as an urban legend. But I don't know this guy. Who? He's such an important secondary character and a very big antagonist in the season, and he probably reveals a really good side of Levi's character that I just don't get. We had a whole episode devoted into his family life and his perspective on morality and all that stuff, but without proper context, it didn't really hit for me. It really did feel like I skipped an episode or two when I first started the season, and I probably did. Oops. The rest of the season is still great though. Levi bringing back Armin is a good example of when emotional sensibility was the correct choice, because up to this point, not being logistical got people killed and had major consequences for the cast. And this does to an extent, I think. However, Levi's choice isn't painted as one that's to be judged. It's a decision that's coded by his experiences with both Armin and Erwin. Erwin was like a psychopath, but he had a real good heart and real optimism towards the future for his people. And so does Armin to an extent. He's one of the only main characters who actually looks forward to seeing the outside world, and not for the semantics of being encaged, but because he wants to do the mundane things like see the ocean and meet other people. In other words, Armin was the right choice because he's the exact person that the people inside the walls could be if given proper freedom.
It must feel good to be ignorant about so much.
Can I help you?
You speak a lot about writing and storytelling, but you're not as experienced as you put on, are you?
Hey, that's not true. I've read a ton of stuff.
Like?
Okay, look, just because I haven't watched or read as much as other people, that doesn't make my perspective invalid. I'm pretty smart without all of that stuff.
You mispronounced catharsis and submissiveness earlier.
I did? Holy crap, I did.
I just wish people like you would accept that you might not be cut out for this stuff. Also, Merry Christmas.
The Rumbling is both the worst arc I've ever read and the best arc I've ever read too. Perspective has been a prevalent theme throughout the series, how viewpoints mingle and crash between one another. As the skeletons in Grish's basement get revealed for all of our characters to see, we realize that there's an entire world out there hell-bent on hating our main characters for the alleged terrorism of their ancestors. While they were busy thinking the Titans were the monsters, everyone else on the planet viewed them as the true monsters, thinking that the existence of Titans are nothing more than forgotten promises or the original sins of those who came before, depending on who you ask. This was an amazing twist in my opinion. Marleyans are prejudiced, but you can't blame them. They're scared. They have families, a home that the existence of the Eldians put at a constant risk. The characters who we thought were traitors were in reality the loyal subjects of a country who just wants to protect what they love, in the same way that the Eldians are. One of my favorite scenes in the entire series is our main characters just sitting around a campfire. The world is ending, and with nothing else to do but prepare for the worst, the Eldians we followed since season 1, Marleyans we've just gotten acquainted with, all sit around and just talk about things. Their issues with each other, their own mistakes, their sins. Just talking doesn't solve their problems. I mean, they immediately go back to punching each other. But for these people, it's the start of true peace. Two ethnicities, scared and overly protective, realize that they aren't so different. And to me, this is what true freedom is supposed to look like. Not being shackled by fear, but empathizing with the fears of one another. History repeats itself. Violence is inevitable, but the series ends with these characters making an effort to build bridges instead of walls. It's a simple idea, a simple theme, but it works in my opinion. And maybe our kindness is nothing more than mere seeds planted on the bed of our lost loved ones. But I don't know, maybe one day they'll bloom into something big and beautiful. And maybe that's just... Alright, well, I guess I gotta talk about it now. The The Rumbling is both the best arc I've ever read and the worst arc I've ever read. Perspective has been a prevalent theme throughout the series, how viewpoints mingle and crash between one another. As the skeletons in Grish's basement get revealed for all of our characters to see, we realize that there's an entire world out there hell-bent on hating our main characters for the alleged terrorism of their ancestors. While they were busy thinking the Titans were the monsters, everyone else on the planet viewed them as the true monsters, thinking that the existence of Titans are nothing more than forgotten promises or the original sins of those who came before, depending on who you ask. Because, depending on who you ask, you can get a sensible lament as to how other races have kept other races in fear for centuries, or you could get someone suggesting self-imposed eugenics.
Now just cut off your penises and throw them into the sun.
Look, I intentionally avoided the fandom's discourse during my read, but the one thing I couldn't shut myself out from was all the Nazi memes, and it's like, yeah. Remember how I touched upon how a lack of perspective and insight can harm an otherwise straightforward and admittedly stunning story and development? Regardless of my ignorance, I went into details on Kenny and the like because I wanted to illustrate that not having enough context for a character can harm my own engagement with them. Case in point, Eren Yeager is one of the funniest characters I've ever had the pleasure of following. Don't get me wrong, right? I am totally fine with someone with reasonable goals edging into megalomania, especially if that self-centeredness wraps around into them becoming an antagonist. The MC, once a hero, being pulled further and further into corruption is one of my favorite tropes, and in my opinion could be a logical extension of Eren's arc. He just learned his people are self-isolated, that they're somewhat the origin of all of his trauma, that they're all destined to be encaged by their own delusion. He has more than enough reason to go crazy from all that claustrophobia. But the thing is, I don't necessarily think Eren's descent is believable because we're not given enough time for it to feel natural. We have a 1-year time skip. Eren looks depressed as balls. We then switch POVs for a whole arc which comes with a time skip of around 4 years. Then when we do see him, he's spouting maniacal monologues, stating how Eldians and Marlians aren't even that different. That is the theme, after all, and I'll contend that it makes for a great episode. However, for the next 2 arcs, Eren literally goes insane, almost reverting back to his childhood independence and arrogance. And the series doesn't even explain why this happens until it's about to end. And what are the explanations that were even given?
He saw the future and knew he had to play along with fate.
Look, I am all for having a series play into the inevitability of reality, but throwing such a complicated plot device like time omnipotence in the middle of your grounded war story for no reason is just too much, I think. Eren literally committed genocide, pushed away his friends, and, excuse my language, but made a total ass of himself, all because of a destiny he foresaw? If you want to introduce any form of time travel, even if it isn't explicitly time travel, that is something you need to focus on and establish strict rules for, not toss into your story at the last second. And I really wish media would stop doing that.
Time travel!
It was the only way to save his people.
One of my favorite scenes in the entire series is our main character sitting around a campfire. The world is ending and yeah, you've heard this before. The story is about the mingling of ideologies colored by major prejudices, ideologies that need to be talked out to be dealt with. Is it naive to say discrimination will end with only diplomacy? I mean, sure, but I would rather the final arc be thematically consistent rather than whatever this is.
He did it for his friends.
What? Yeah, so Eren's character got majorly assassinated, and it's made worse because to ruin Eren's character, Isayama had to ruin the other characters too. Like, for some reason, Ymir has never in her life experienced kindness, or has seen kindness until Eren and Mikasa came along, which is literally impossible, but the plot needs it to be factual because that's the only way the rumbling can stop. The arc ended with only NPCs dying because if our main cast died, that would have meant Eren willingly killed someone we actually like and care for, and that's where we draw the line, etc, etc. Armin, someone who is known for appreciating life, is thanking someone for snuffing out the lives of so many people. Levi isn't dead, even though his conclusion could have been the most meaningful, and Mikasa. Oh, Mikasa. Look, I'm not opposed to characters who dick ride the heck out of DMC. Rem is a favorite of mine, and it's because of how supportive she is. But I don't know, at least ReZero's author knew to literally kill her off in the beginning of the second season. That's because when your most loud trait is your infatuation with a boy who simply doesn't care until the literal end of the story, it can be grating after a while for some people. Like, I relished moments where she quipped towards her enemies, or we had one-on-one time with Armin, because outside of these small moments, she's not much of a person on her own, which is hilarious because that is what Historia's arc is all about subverting, breaking free of the obligations you feel like you have to the people around you and just being the best you that you can possibly be, just pure individuality. Mikasa not having this individuality is part of the point, as it's left ambiguous as to if her love for Eren was ever genuine or just an obsession birthed by genetics. However, the series was building up to her finally breaking free from this curse, kind of like how Historia did, only to choose love instead of the sensible and most pure self-loving decision. I mean, it's not like Historia fares any better. She becomes a homebodied seed bucket by the end of the series, but I think you guys get the point. A while ago, me and my friends went on a trip to an amusement park, and it was the worst thing ever. It was really hot, we spent most of it arguing, everyone was separated and isolated, and since I was sort of the newcomer, I felt like everything was happening because I was there. I almost cried twice. It was kind of bad. However, I still look at that trip very fondly because while our actual time at the park wasn't that great, everything leading up to it was. The car ride there, the music we listened to while driving, the talks we had in the hotel rooms. Despite all of the trip's flaws, I still look forward to the next one. Look, Attack on Titan has a lot of stupid stuff in it, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's even a good manga, but I still liked it. The final arc had a lot of issues, but there was a lot of good in it still, and everything leading up to it was good as well. I can't disregard what the series gave me just because of an ending I didn't like. You totally can, and that's reasonable. I don't think anyone should take that away from you. Maybe it's because of my expectations. I expected it to get really bad. I expected the worst, and in a way I got it. However, for all of its faults, I can't hate Attack on Titan. This is the bus stop, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So, how was your day?
Not gonna lie, it wasn't that great. Someone basically told me I'm a fraud, and I didn't really have any comebacks to it, so...
Oh, shit. I'm sorry, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it was over something stupid. And it's cause I haven't watched enough anime or whatever.
Well, that's okay. I haven't watched much either. It's not like it's your job to critique it or anything.
Maybe I do need to read more manga and watch more stuff in general. Though, given my past interests, I wouldn't really know where to start.
Have you tried One Piece?
Huh?
Have you tried One Piece?
No. No, I actually haven't.